This is the last round.
Are you ready? And you know what? First, before we even get into this, I want to introduce our new co-host of the show, the Peacemaker, Leslie Smith.
Somebody with a brain is finally here.
I was just thinking the same thing, bro. Leslie, you can talk now. It's okay.
I'm glad to be here. Happy to be here. I was just thinking about how I didn't even watch
The Oscars?
Yeah, I guess I next time you got to give me a cheat sheet that I got to watch the Oscars.
I didn't watch them either, so don't. It's okay.
Oh, okay. So I'll just pretend like you.
I'll ask both of you guys then. Why would Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty be handing out an award together?
They were in a movie together.
What movie?
I forgot the name of it.
Bonnie and Clyde. Okay, you've lost all your talking privileges for 4 minutes. Let me ask you this first, because you brought this up, and this is something that's right now in the news. Again, there's actually two fighter unions that are trying to work themselves into the business, and a couple of them have some pretty big names. Have you taken any heat from Dana or anybody at Zuffa that has heard you talk? Because you have been open about thinking that it's a good idea to have a fighters union. Has anyone said anything to you?
Well, Zuffa's no more, by the way.
You get what I'm saying?
Nope, no one has ever said anything to me about anything, and I've even talked about it with UFC employees at UFC fights while I'm getting ready to go walk to weigh-ins, walk around at the hotel with all the other UFC employees. No, really, everyone agrees. Everyone is in agreement that fighters should be treated better. As far as the details, that's where people get a little bit different, but everyone's in agreement. It's just about making it happen.
And you know what's funny is the reason that you need this is because the UFC has such a monopoly. If they didn't, you have Bellator, you have other companies, but if UFC didn't have such a monopoly, this wouldn't happen, because boxing doesn't have this, because you have so many different promoters, so many different fighters doing different things, and they're making so much money. So do you think if the UFC was more open to let's say Leslie Smith wants to take a Bellator fight next week because they offer her a great fight, but you still want to stay a UFC fighter, but hey, I want to go fight this fight in Bellator, Dana. Hey, I want to make this money. If he was open to that happening, no one would even be talking about a fighters union other than maybe the Reebok deal and shit like that. But do you think that there's ever a chance down the road, if this union happens, that you could go fight Bellator and then go fight UFC the next week or the next month or 2 months later?
Absolutely. That's going to be one of the main goals, is non-exclusive contracts or limited exclusivity. So you pointed out that boxing, it's not the same as MMA. One of the big deals is that in boxing, there are belts and there are sanctioning bodies that sanction those belts, and then there's a promotion which is separate from the belt. So if there's a big fight, say somebody wants to get me fighting at Betch, someone wants to get me versus Betch, and it's good. They're like, dude, there's so much hype behind this fight. This is the biggest fight out there. We got to make it happen. So in boxing, what happens is that the different shows, they start bidding a bidding war to get that fight.
And the money goes up and up and up.
Mm-hmm, and then Betch brings, I don't know if she has belts. I only have one championship belt from when I was fighting in Colorado. But say we both had 2 belts, and when we both bring our belts from those sanctioning bodies, so now there's these promotions and they're bidding, and whoever wins that bid in the promotions, yes, they're paying more money because they had to compete with the other promotions.
Right.
But now we're going to get more money as the fighters because they just had to fight with someone to get us. And so, so what happens then is that you have actual competition, which is the promotions compete with the promotions, and then the fighters compete with the fighters. And that's exactly what's not happening right now. Because in the UFC, there's UFC belts, and it's more than just the UFC, it's in MMA. In MMA, the most significant belt that a person can get is a UFC belt.
Right.
And you cannot fight for a UFC belt in Bellator or in Invicta or in ONE FC. You can't do it. So that's where the monopoly comes in that you're talking about, and it's distinctly anti-competitive. Not only does it prevent the promoters from competing with each other, it actually, when I sign a contract with the UFC, I am agreeing to not seek the best competition. Because if there's someone that I want to fight who's in Bellator, who is the ideal fight, who according to the rankings is the person that I need to fight next, who everyone says is going to be the best matchup, maybe it's the last person I haven't fought yet. It's all rematches other than that. But I have signed with the UFC, so I have agreed to not be competitive with them.
Right.
So it's really the structure of the whole thing. And that's one of the issues between the groups is that there's the MMAFA, and they are doing a lawsuit right now to an antitrust lawsuit, class action lawsuit. And if they can't support a union, because if a union comes in and gets a collective bargaining agreement signed with the UFC, the collective bargaining agreement just being a basic agreement, like a basic contract between the employees and the promotion.
Right.
So if we sign a CBA, then that automatically gives antitrust protection to the UFC. So that's like a whole other level.
Right.
I don't want to call it infighting, but
it is.
It's a conflict.
Right.
It's a conflict between the two groups. It's always been a conflict between the MMAFA and any of the other groups. And so however it ends up working, if the lawsuit goes through and then things have to get revamped in the UFC and really all of MMA as a result of that, then yes, we'll totally be fighting each other, cross promotionally.
Right.
But if it doesn't go through and we end up getting a union before any of their stuff goes through, before the lawsuit or anything like that, then that's going to be a really big deal in any collective bargaining agreement, is going to be the cross promotional option, is going to be the ability to fight other people in other promotions and be available for another promotion to pay me. Like, that's huge.
Absolutely. And then they can bid for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why
I feel enlightened.
when I explain it to people, I explain it like this. Boxing is, like you said, it's independent contractors fighting for whatever promoter gives them the most money, fighting the best fighters in the world. UFC is more like its own sport. They're more like the NBA or Major League Baseball, whereas the UFC sees themselves as just one entity. They don't care about MMA. It's UFC. You're not an MMA fighter, you're a UFC fighter. And so that's the difference. And I honestly think that it happens so quickly, and the sport is still in its infancy, but it happened so quickly that no one really stepped in to stop that from happening. It was so quick because the UFC is what people, you tell someone I'm an MMA fighter, Joe Schmo on the street's going to say, oh, you fight in the UFC. That's what they think.
Well, what's funny is that they say that to me. They're like, ha, you're going to fight in the UFC? And then I say, yeah, I do. And then they're quiet for a couple of minutes, like trying to think of something. They're like, maybe did I phrase that question wrong? And then they're like, so do you fight in the UFC? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh.
Yeah. All right, so here's what we're going to do. So that's good. Thank you for telling us that. And we want to talk more about that as the weeks go on, because it is an evolving story and people want to know about it. Real quick, before we go to commercial and come back with Scotty Schwartz, did you guys see the video of the showboating fighter who was doing the dance and he was trying to be cool, kind of like Cody Garbrandt, and he got knocked the fuck out?
Yes.
I did see that.
So first of all, how happy did that video make you by the end of the
I
video?
kind of felt sorry for the dude.
Oh,
to be
no
honest
way.
with you.
I was so happy. It was like the first time I had sex. That's how happy I was when I watched him get knocked out. Let me ask you this.
It was about that fast.
Because listen, you're a scrap packer. You really are. What did he say? You're not going to talk anymore. Stop looking at the camera. Here's the situation where you're not going to get dates from looking at the camera, right? You know that, right?
I already have.
I thought that's why we're on. Isn't that why we're here?
Can I ask you a question?
I already have.
Before we talk about the showboating, can I ask you? Oh my gosh! Now I got two of them. We're gonna go to commercial when we come back. We'll have
and I was
Scotty
very
Schwartz.
distracted too.
Okay.